group as a whole. They are surprisingly hardy, given their physical changes, sources of stress, and society's negative stereotypes of aging. Older people as a group have also developed a more narrow focus on what it takes to be satisfied and happy with life. It's what we call selective optimization, making the most of what you have. For example, exercising carefully to avoid accidents and falls, and limiting social contacts to those most important to you. Irreversible psychological deterioration is the exception and not the rule of old age, especially when there is no severe physical illness. For instance, there is a decrease in emotional outbursts with age and a decrease in psychosomatic symptoms. And older adults seem to be better at getting the gist of a problem. Traditionally, this has come to be seen as the growth of wisdom with age. Even the most noticeable cognitive change in the aged, loss of memory, can be ameliorated with behavioral techniques. Though not as quick as their younger counterparts, the elderly do as well or better on vocabulary and general information memory tests. Sherry Willis of Pennsylvania State University has been developing new educational training methods which help the elderly function more effectively.
Many older adults are afraid of losing their mental abilities. They see a lot of publicity about senile dementia. They know that they're not in the kinds of jobs that demand the kind of mental exercise that they had before they retired.
Ruth, number 6.
We see some decline in their cognitive abilities or skills simply as a function of disuse, the use it or lose it kind of phenomena. We're familiar with that phenomenon in terms of physical well-being and exercise, but it seems to hold true for mental abilities too.
If you want to turn it around and take a look and see if you were coming from
One of the abilities we've been studying is what's called spatial ability, the ability to mentally visualize in one's mind, for example, in using a road map, whether one should turn left or right, go up a street or down a street. We developed a series of exercises that key in on that particular skill or ability. We found that with very short educational training, the performance of older adults on a variety of tasks related to their daily life can be significantly improved.
Some disabilities are beyond help, however. The severe deterioration in mental abilities due to brain injury or disease is known as dementia. Senile dementia is a late-life condition in which a gradual reduction in mental efficiency occurs due to biochemical and neuronal changes in the brain. Dementia can have devastating consequences, including the loss of memory, learning, language abilities, orientation, and self-care.
Of course I do, Doctor.
Can you repeat them?
It can lead to wandering and purposeless activity, inappropriate sexual behavior, apathy, and aggression.
Who are you? Who are you? What are you doing in my house? Out of my house! No! You!
Gallagher, you must stay in bed.
Oh.
You're in a hospital, remember?
Oh, hospital?
Oh, you're going to get...
But only 5% of people over 65 and only 20% of those over 80 suffer from it. Contrary to popular belief, the rates of depression and anxiety among the elderly are not higher in later life either. Although there is an increase in paranoid disorders, it is usually traceable to losses in hearing or vision. Given all the stresses associated with aging, from forced retirement and decreasing financial resources to declining health and the death of a spouse, it's surprising that the elderly do not show a corresponding increase in stress-related disorders. They suffer no more and sometimes less than middle-aged people do. Perhaps the elderly have an increased tolerance of stress as a natural part of life. There's also good news for the elderly about sexuality. Research has shown no loss in the ability to derive sexual pleasure as one ages, assuming one remains healthy. The bad news, however, is that many mistaken beliefs about aging and sexuality cause unnecessary anxiety over small changes in sexual functioning. Also, the elderly often worry that there's something wrong about still having sexual thoughts and fantasies. Those worries, in turn, may make them give up on sex entirely. Yet there's absolutely no reason why they shouldn't have the same feelings they had when they were younger, and still be able to enjoy their sexuality. Research on aging seems to question the attitudes of the rest of us. Why do we think there's far more deterioration and despair among the elderly than actually exists? The culprit may be our old friend, the availability heuristic. Personally experienced or vivid cases in the media are overrepresented in our memory, giving us a falsely exaggerated picture. We also downplay equally dramatic instances of outstanding accomplishment among the elderly. People who are far more vital and creative than the majority of their younger colleagues. At Pennsylvania State University, a long-term study on the effects of aging is being conducted by psychologist Werner Schei.
Well, we've been studying adults from the 20s to the 80s over the last 30 years, was following the same people over time, as well as comparing people of the same ages at different historical periods. Now, what we found is that, first of all, age changes occur much slower than most people think. People tend to peak in midlife. 40s, 50s are the ages at which we are in full command of our physical function, and also we've had enough experience so that we have something to use our brain for. From then on, it's a matter of maintaining it. A lot of people progressively move out of things. Especially retirement can be a real threat in the sense that you may no longer be challenged as much as you were when you were working. People who do well as they get older are, first of all, people who take care of themselves, who lead basically a healthy life and an active life. Secondly, they are people who have flexible attitudes, who don't have to have everything in its place, who don't have to do things always the same way, but who can roll with the punches, who can enjoy new experiences, and who can take the changes that occur as you get older as challenges rather than as threats and defeats.
We've seen a lot about the aging process, but what about the social process of aging? History tells us of societies where the old were left to die when they could no longer contribute. In the United States, however, we now have more humane ways of abandoning the old. We put them in nursing homes, where the care, both physical and psychological, is often inadequate. Currently, about 5% of those 65 and older and 23% of those 85 and older live in nursing homes. But this figure will rise dramatically as the population ages. What's wrong with living in a nursing home? Almost everything. You lose privacy, individuality, and self-management. You lose connections with your past, your friends and neighbors. You live in an alien environment with strangers, a world of excessive bed rest and medication. Sexuality is discouraged implicitly and explicitly. Family contacts may sometimes diminish because the environment is usually unpleasant and because of the guilt involved in visiting. And despite even the best medical care, the staff, which is rarely trained in psychology, often behaves in ways that treat the elderly like children, not wise senior citizens. The more they're perceived this way, the more dependent and childlike they actually become. New research also points to several factors that predict rapid deterioration and early death among those who have been relocated to nursing homes. Ironically, being cheerful, cooperative, and outward-reaching is worse than being suspicious and aggressive. In other words, the good die younger. And those with the most hope when they experience relocation suffer the most when the reality of the change sets in. Fortunately, many of the problems of old age can be ameliorated by education, training, and changes in the environment. Also, promoting a sense of personal control and responsibility in the elderly has major psychological and medical benefits. Primary prevention involves education of the elderly and the rest of society about the truths of aging, to dispel myths and change negative stereotypes. Secondary prevention can then help the elderly redesign their environment to minimize and accommodate natural changes due to aging. Public transportation can be made more accessible. Vision and hearing tests can be given as early as possible to overcome physical problems before they affect mental outlook. More home visits by medical personnel and counselors can be made to help the elderly function longer in familiar surroundings. And more psychological training for caregivers can prevent problems of overdependence and depression. The third level of prevention is early intervention by therapists to help those who may face problems associated with aging, to minimize progressive decline. Florida Congressman Claude Pepper, here addressing the American Association of Retired Persons, is representative of the increasingly vocal and politically powerful elderly. The AARP is now one of the most influential political action committees in Washington, D.C. In 1870, only 3% of the American population was over 65. By the year 2040, that number will reach 20%. They call it the graying of America, and sooner or later, you're going to be part of it. In our next program, however, we'll explore a side of psychology that goes beyond the changes in behavior due to aging. We'll see how our thoughts, feelings, and actions are influenced by other people, no matter how old we are. We'll look at some social situations that are more powerful than you ever imagined. Situations that can bring out the best and the worst in human nature. The world of social psychology. Next time, I'm Philip Zimbardo.
Funding for this program is provided by Annenberg CPB to advance excellent teaching. For information about this and other Annenberg CPB programs, call 1-800-LEARNER and visit us at www.learner.org. To learn more about the Annenberg CPB Channel series and workshops for teachers, how to take them for credit, how to buy them on video cassette, call 1-800-LEARNER and visit us at www.learner.org/channel. The Annenberg CPB Channel.